kind of feel like the wake up call has only really just begun for Australia, and I think the populace has started to realise it, but maybe our political figures quite haven't realised the importance of it just yet either.
Hello and welcome to The Focus. Today we're joined by Mel Pikos. Mel is the host of Talking Tactics, a defense-focused platform breaking down military capability, force structure and strategy in clear, accessible terms. With a sharp analytical eye and a reputation for candid assessments of platforms, procurement and readiness, Mel has built a following for translating complex defense issues into practical, no-nonsense conversations. His work bridges enthusiast insight with serious strategic commentary, making him a distinctive voice in Australia's contemporary defence discussion. Mel, welcome to The Focus.
Thanks very much, John. Much appreciated. Thanks for having me on the podcast.
Thank you. Mel, in a recent episode of Talking Tactics, you graded the Royal Australian Navy's qualitative strengths. You rated the Hobart-class destroyers and the MH-60 Romeo helicopters as A tier, the Canberra-class landing helicopter docks and Collins-class submarines as B tier, and much of the remaining fleet as C tier or below. You describe the Royal Australian Navy as a navy in transition, and that's a fair point. But today I want to widen this because the issue isn't just about the Navy. The issue is whether the Australian Defence Force as a whole is structurally ready for sustained high-end competition. Deterrence isn't naval alone, it's joint service. So the question becomes, are we building an integrated warfighting system or acquiring exquisite platforms without depth?
Look, I would quite generally say it probably comes back to the broader question, are we spending enough on our Defence Force? And I'd say that obviously the short answer is no. When we start looking at some high cost acquisitions, things like the AUKUS nuclear subs, they obviously take a big chunk of that budget and it kind of just starts taking away from other things that we should be investing in. And I feel like there's a general reluctance from the Albanese government to go in there and really hike up defence spending. There's quite a lot of other priorities at the moment. When you look at platform or at least programs like the NDIS, which is really ballooning out massively, it's making it very hard to divert much needed funds to protecting Australia. And quite generally, I think that a lot of programs are therefore slipping through the cracks. Really, what should we be trying to leverage? I would say particularly our relationship with the US to try and effectively be their forward base in Asia Pacific, which I think we're starting to do, and people are starting to wake up to the fact that hey, maybe we do need to start looking at some of these programs that help help the United States project power into our region. So I think some things are being done right, but overall, I would probably give us a C plus at best.
Wow, well, that's a bit of a damning indictment, I've got to say. But I do get where you're coming from, believe me. But of course, what you've just said also comes to the very heart of defence and having a defence force, and that's sovereignty. I
Mm.
mean, are the many years of governments kind of treating defence as the kid down the street, as opposed to a pressing priority? Have Australian successive Australian governments effectively thrown sovereignty out the window now because we have no other option but double down on our American ties and effectively let them garrison our country because the ADF as a whole is just not capable enough of securing the continent?
Look, I think there has been quite generally a decade of neglect, and we've probably taken it for granted. And I think it really does stem from a lot of people forget, but when Tony Abbott was Prime Minister, Xi Jinping came to Canberra and he presented to Parliament in 2014. And he said by the middle of the century, China will be a democracy.
Yeah.
We fell for it hook, line, and sinker.
Mm,
We took him at face value. We took the foot off the accelerator and we didn't spend what we needed to do. And structurally, that has weakened our spending. And quite frankly, it's taken us quite a few years to wake up to the fact that, oh, hang on a minute. China's just gone and built this massive, massive blue water navy in the background,
yeah. Yep.
all while saying that we're don't worry, we're non-threatening, we're the type of administration that doesn't want to annex neighboring countries, and we're very friendly pandas. And then, by surprise, we've woken up. We've finally woken up, and I think really it's been Donald Trump that has called to arms the rest of the world and said, "Hang on a minute, this what is being said and the actions don't marry up." So we were
Mm,
lulled into a false sense of security, really, from that point onwards. So I can understand why successive governments took the stance of, well, maybe defence isn't the highest priority. We're in a peaceful environment. We're very far removed from where there's conflict in the world. We had that mindset of the war on terror still for a long time, and
mm,
quite simply, a lot of it turned when Russia invaded Ukraine, which I believe is what, 4 years now this month.
yeah. Yeah.
So it's a big ship to turn to all of a sudden say, hang on a minute, we were spending in the high 1% of GDP. A lot of Western European nations are now upping it to 4 or 5% of GDP.
Mm,
America, I think, is somewhere around 3%, and we've, I guess, had an administration that has wanted to bury its head in the sand as to the realities of geopolitics at the moment. And I kind of feel like the wake up call has only really just begun for Australia. And I think the populace has started to realise it, but maybe our political figures quite haven't realised the importance of it just yet either. It'd be important for you and I to talk about it so we
yep.
can make people aware that, hang on a minute, these guys need some more money so we can
Mm,
get what we need.
yeah, exactly. Look, turning to the politicians and the political equation, politicians love to rope out the uniformed people and talk tough about defense, but they never seem to be able to follow up. And, complicating the matter further for Australia is our economy is basically stuck in China's orbit. We had some, trade war issues during the whole COVID Morrison period, but again, the one single line of trade that is untouchable by any Australian government is iron ore shipments to China. The very iron ore that's being milled and refined and, helps create the massive military modernization program that we're seeing right now. Um, how do you square this? Because I mean, I've seen all sorts of bureaucratic conniptions coming out of Canberra saying, "Oh, look, we can sit in the middle. We're leveraging here. We're hedging there. We're really sophisticated. We're very good. We've got statecraft all over us." And I don't know about you, but when I look at the way that we handle ourselves, it does look like a two-bob job. Flick the coin, see what happens. I don't think defense should be that. I think defense should be far firmer, grounded, especially politically, because neither Liberal nor Labor have come up with anything that gives me, perhaps even you, certainly a lot of our listeners, the confidence necessary that we know what we're doing. I was going to say a bad word then, Mel, but anyway.
Well, unfortunately, I think we can keep blaming politicians, which they're responsible for a lot of the bad decisions that have been happening. But I
Mm,
also think that really politicians are responding to what wins votes, and I just don't feel like the Australian public is educated enough as to what the threats
yeah.
are to Australia, and therefore it's not really a big voter issue. It doesn't poll very highly as to what are concerning to the everyday average Australian. We probably are just in general not educated enough because we've been so peaceful for so long. Everyone's just been lulled into a false sense of security. Things
Mm.
like iron ore, obviously, it's immensely important for Australia. Rio Tinto has just opened up a big mine in Africa, which I believe their third
Mm.
shipment has gone to China. That
Yep.
presents as a strategic risk for us. I'm not a big advocate for decoupling from China personally. I think that the more you decouple from a country like China economically, the higher the probability that there is a reason to um, uh, have a war. If you think about the strategic reality of what China requires, something like 80 to 90% of all of their energy is imported, and a similar quantum of a percentage of food is imported. Heavily reliant on countries like Australia, they're effectively a trading nation. Um, Hence why we've made such a big investment in the AUKUS submarines, because some of the key shipping lanes, like the Sunda and the Malacca Strait, we can effectively park an AUKUS nuclear powered sub at each of those points, send them up from Stirling in WA. Hugely important strategic value for both US and us to be able to effectively cut off their trade.